On today's Ill Exclusive, we're joined by Jay Flores and Jason Votrabek. Jason talks about doing time next door to La Barbie. And we also get into the internet storytime economy and how they believe in Tekashi 6ix9ine's crusade. Let's get it.
Hey, what's up, Jason? How you doing, man?
How we doing,
Pleasure.
Jay? Man, it's a privilege, bro.
No, no, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you for being on.
Your story's been very intriguing. I've known about your story since 2014. I did time with somebody on your case. One of the heads of the GDs out of Chicago.
Who
Big,
is?
call him Big Rob.
Okay, Big Rob. Yeah, yeah. I know Big Rob.
Oh, you do know Big
Yeah,
Rob?
yeah. He's a good dude.
Fire,
Good
dude.
dude.
Listen, dude. Hey, the dude took me under his wing. Cool. I'm talking about straight up, dude. And I was like, hey, bro. We got really close talking
No.
about the cases, and then he'd
Hey, Jason.
started
I,
talking.
I I apologize. He was there for that mortgage fraud, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay.
So you know exactly who he is.
Yeah, I know who he is.
For money laundering is what he was in
Yeah,
for.
yeah. Big money too, though. Big
Yeah.
money, dude.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he talked highly about you. And that's when I first started hearing about your story and everything else because I was just talking to a smuggler today. I did an interview with a guy back from the 80s. And, I do a lot of stuff. I started doing things calling people out because a lot of people's stories just fall apart. They're bullshit. And that's what I loved about yours. I started following all your content in all the interviews. And I'm like, damn, dude, him and Peter are straight up. Like, I'll be honest with you. A lot of people can call bullshit, but how many people in the United States can actually talk about meeting and eating at the table of the heads of the cartels?
I see that your platform that you were kind of calling people out and stuff like that. And I will tell you something. Look, Shy's here. Shy and I became friends because he called us out and he has the same, feelings or thoughts of people who cooperate. And I always say, look, I respect that, but that's not going to change, history. That's not going to change who I am as a person. It is what it is. Um, uh, and the reason why we even started having these conversations calling people out is because there's a lot of platforms, right? And it seems like the platforms that promote bullshit or and bullshit stories and all these different people who come on that were like these huge kingpins, right? And then they'll be like, well, I didn't rat or I didn't do this or I'm not that way, or whatever the case is. I feel like, okay, if you're gonna say your story, geez, just me, I'm not, you called me a gatekeeper, right? I'm not being a gatekeeper of the game. I'm being like, if you don't have nothing positive to say after the fact, after you got caught, after you were this kingpin, right? It's bullshit that you ain't lived that life, right? You know, um,
Well, the thing is, Jado, you are the gatekeeper. You and 6ix9ine are the gate. He's the gatekeeper of the rappers. And the reason why I say that is think about this. They label you as the rat, the enemy, public enemy number one. Am I correct?
absolutely, yeah.
What has every one of those guys that labeled you that done since then?
You know what? They haven't done it since then. They've been doing it before me.
Well, no, I agree. So this is why I wanted to come on, and I want a lot of people to be educated in this. So, what does the drug cartels call it when they're leaking information to the DEA and to the other government agencies?
They call it a business, right? They
They
call
call it
it,
business.
yeah.
Okay, but when they come to federal prison, what happens in federal prison?
You know what? They don't have trouble like that. They have to pay or whatever, but they act
Nah,
like look. You even when you told me about Barbie, you know,
Barbie can't walk no prison yard,
you know what? But he's not in Woodseck, right?
huh?
He's not in Woodseck, right?
No, he's at Coleman too at the dropout yard.
Yeah. Well, Jay, listen, I know, but I'm gonna tell you something. One of the biggest cooperators was Ociel Cardenas, all right?
Uh huh.
He cooperated and he did the step down program in ADX and guess what? He was walking the yard. As a matter of fact, he was getting extorted, $10,000 a month. He even got beat up because of it, but he was able to walk. But I will tell you, look, you know
What
how
yard was he walking at though?
all of them after he stepped on the ADX.
Really?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Prison policy, like it depends on where they're in prison, right? But you know
Yes.
this, right? Everyone's for sale, bro. You have the
No,
money.
you're correct.
So these people have money. So I would tell you something. I don't care where I was at. My situation could have been a little bit different just because, seriously, it's like it's the American culture, right? The American like gangbanging culture, especially they can't take someone like me. They don't like that. I don't look like them, think like them, and it's hate. But in reality, I could have paid paid anyone at any prison yards I would have been gone to, and I would have been okay
No,
because they'll
no,
take the money.
I agree to a I agree to a certain extent, and I'm going to tell you this from the prison politics I've been
Mm-hmm.
around. The American gangs, you would have to be on a Paisa yard because you wouldn't be able to walk no American gang yard, like the TSs, Texas Syndicates, Mexican Mafia.
Yeah.
If they can't walk on a Paisa, like the Paisas are going to extort you. You're just going to pay for protection to walk the yard and stuff. But El Barbie, he's not walking. They sent him to Big Sandy. He spent 2 years in the shoe.
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, dude, he went straight to the shoe. They're going to
what's that?
unalive his ass.
What's that Coleman? What is it? A dropout yard?
Yeah, it's a dropout. Coleman 2 is a dropout yard. So that's where all the rats go. But there's a lot of politics there, and they're probably still extorting him there. But I don't
Mm.
think he has money anymore because when I was with him, um, dude, like supposedly I read his paperwork and read a lot of stuff. He killed over 150 people himself. He was a killer. Am I right or wrong? I don't know.
No, he probably killed more than that. That's what he
Well,
probably admitted to. Yeah.
but that's what I'm getting at. But what I'm trying to say is this dude is in federal prison. I'm in. So my case is in Atlanta. He's being held in Atlanta. So me and him are in the same unit
Hmm.
because I would go back on appeals and fight my case. So I'd be in the same dorm with him. He's literally going prayer meeting, prayer meeting. I'm like, bro, dude, God's not going to save you, dude. Like, you done did too much. And people are like, you didn't talk to him that way. I'm like, yeah, dude, he has no pull in prison. Like, you have to realize his power's over with. He's just like me and you, but on the outside, the dude was a killer. Am I right or wrong?
No, absolutely. He's practically the one that almost like created this whole social media like videos and killing on videos and stuff like that. And
Really?
he was a real like that's why I try to explain. Even when people ask me about him, like he started off as a drug trafficker, but he got famous because he was a killer, and that's what he did. He was more of a like
What
the arm wing of the cartel for Arturo Beltran Leyva.
what made
Um,
him do that? Do you know? Because when I met him, he was not. He had to be a cold, cold person because when I met him, dude, he was the most laid back, God forgiving, crazy. I'm like, there is no way this dude's a killer.
no, Che, but he was always like that. Even back in
Really?
Mexico. Yeah, he was laid back. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys are. Even there's killers like that here in the US, right? That
I already know,
that
dude. The killers in
eh,
prison are using the most
the
calmest
killer
ones.
yeah, the calmest ones. That's why, once you've been to prison, you've been in these environments, you kind of know who's who, right? And I tell Shy all this time, right? Especially the ones that talk a lot and do that. There's a lot of people that will do it just because you call them out and then they can't go back, right? Those are probably the scariest ones because they're reacting out of they have to, right? And then they become these killers, right? But most of the people who are serious, you've been in prison, and it doesn't matter where you are in Mexico or in America, they're going to be the calm ones, they're going to be the quiet ones. um and he, I'm not sure why he started, killing and stuff, but he was known as a killer more, before he was a drug trafficker.
Here's my question though: is like I really want people to understand the consequences doing what you did and what I did on a small level. Um, because the difference between me and you is I'm not a gangster. I love your quote. You can only be a gangster or a hustler or a gangster. You can't be both.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Like you can be an L Barbie, be a hustler and a gangster. But would you agree to me you can only get so big and like you get the target put on you too fast? See, like you, how in the world did you get so big without the feds being on you?
Yeah, a misconception. The feds were on us. That's the reason why we got so big was because we were trying to beat them each and every day, right? Working harder than them. So we were hot, from a very, after like what 8 months into us starting to drug trafficking, but we were just
Really?
good at what we did, and we just, outworked them basically. But I would tell you, look, I've been around, I grew up and I was born into to the drug trafficking world, to cartel world. When people come out and reach out to me, be like, oh, you shouldn't have got in the game, or they try to talk to me about drug trafficking or Mexican cartel, it's laughable. Um, but I've never seen it. I've seen them try it, and most of them don't make it. They end up in prison or end up dead. Um,
Huh?
and there's very few. On the other side of it, when it comes to like large scale drug trafficking, right? Some of the biggest drug traffickers you probably never would have heard of. My brother and I probably are the most well known because we cooperated, right? They know us as that.
Nah, I don't think you're as well known as you think you are, because when I talk to people, nobody knows who you are really, because y'all's story's been suppressed so much. But it's so big and so crazy that the El Chapos and everybody else take the energy out of the room on you.
Yeah, when we talk about that with certain people, it's like, especially here in the comments or when we do, lives with Shy, it's like they always try to compare, like, to, for example, to a Big Meech, right? And here's the thing: look, Big Meech got famous for, putting billboards,
Yeah.
putting billboards up, for throwing money, for making that noise, right? That's what he's famous for. People could think, well, he had money, so that makes him a hustler, but he's not famous for being a hustler. He's famous for being
Being
probably,
loud.
being loud, like extremely loud, and probably being one of the first ones that did it at that level, right?
Well, the
Um,
thing is that you say it the best. He had a middleman and I didn't.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And you being in prison, look, you've been in prison, you've been around drug traffickers, you've been around,
well, I've been
Mexican
around the
cartel members.
beaches. The
Yeah,
beaches are
okay.
the ones that connected me to 50 and Kirkland Morrison, Big Mike, and everybody else. So they're the ones that plugged me in, and I've been, like you. I was one of the questions I was going to ask you later about like the deal with 50 and stuff. I don't know if you want to talk about it publicly, but
Mhm.
um, that whole industry is real small. Everybody knows each other, especially when you go to the feds and you get around people.
Yeah.
It gets intertwined, but everybody knows. Like the documentary put Big Meech up there, but when you dig into his stuff, he wasn't as big as they made him out to be.
Yeah, you
Um,
know what? I say that all the time, but this is the hardest part. Look, we come on here, we have this little videos that we put out called Kingpin Reacts, right?
yeah,
And I take it that people, oh, you're hating on them, and like, look, I think it's great when people are doing positive things. We talked about Owen Hansen recently, right? He's pushing a product. But here's what again, because he says, "Well, I didn't cooperate, or I didn't tell him Jefe." Like, bro, you grab 10, 20 keys, and maybe you think in your mind you're a big drug trafficker, right? But he sells the story. But to me, it's like, look, there's a bunch of young kids out there, young youth, or whatever, people who are into drug trafficking, that think that it's cool. They're making it cool because he doesn't talk about, what, I cried, I did this, I did everything I had to do to get out, and that's the part that bothers me, right? Even when,
that why do you think I do my videos though, Jay? Because I get tired of these guys going out here making these young kids like rappers. So you know why I got in the drug gang? So I'm a clean cut white boy, right? I don't have no tattoos. I've been to
Mhm,
prison twice. It started out at 15 years old. I didn't fit in prison. Everybody's like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here, right? So you got to realize when I first started, everybody that I grew up around, all my dad's friends were all drug smugglers from the 80s.
mhm,
They all flew planes. My mom's high school sweetheart
mhm,
died in an airplane crash smuggling drugs.
mhm.
I mean, like, I grew up around smuggling. Like, there's my dad's friends got paperwork tied to Pablo Escobar. Um,
Okay.
so the thing is I grew up around it. But you know what? Nobody told me how much time you get. You know what everybody told me? Oh, your first offense, you'll get 5 years. Your first offense, you get 5 years. And I'm like, shit, 5 years for a couple million? Sign me the fuck up. Let me tell you something. It got real when I went to trial in a life sentence. And if anybody don't believe me, go look up my paperwork. Both my trials were life sentences they wanted to give me, and I refused to cooperate. And my story's different than yours, and that's why I was going to come on and talk to you about that. Um, because Toss 69 says it the best. I'm not going to be loyal to people that wasn't loyal to me, and you fall under that same
Yeah,
category.
you know what? Because what I don't like to do is make excuses, right? Look,
Yeah, but it's
I
not
did,
excuses,
yeah,
Jay.
yeah,
I
I
want
did
people
know
to
the drug
understand the game.
trafficking. Yeah, I did know drug trafficking, right? Look, I was around drug trafficking before I even understood what it was. My dad was, and my dad hated snitches, and I knew the sentencing guidelines before I even, ever even picked up a key, right? I
Yeah,
knew what I was getting myself into, and my whole thing was beat them. But I will tell you something. There's a lot of very big drug traffickers, gangsters, even shot callers for big American gangs. I'm talking about GDs, BDs, all of them cooperated as soon as they got caught. Okay, against me and my brother.
yep.
That's how I got indicted. That's what made me to get to, allow me to get to Mexico. And some of the biggest gangsters, right? And I have this thing where my brother would be like, "Look, the more gangster you are, the more you show me that you don't give a fuck, the more you're not gonna give a fuck when you're sitting looking at a life sentence. You don't respect anyone. What makes you think that you're gonna be like, oh, I'm not gonna do that, right? And we've never been wrong about that. But once I was involved and I thought it was a business, right? Because we were in it for the business, right? Again, we're hustlers. We're not gangsters. I always say you could keep that, you know. I've
Yeah, because
never
I never
seen.
read nothing of y'all doing anything violent.
Yeah, we're a nonviolent organization, right? And even then, if you look at the comments, you look at the story, people get upset, like, no, you have to have bodies. Like, first I'm soft, but now you want me to have violence, right? And I would tell you, some people ask me all the time, like, how'd you do it? I said, look, man, someone like Big Rob would know, or people in the street. A lot of times, people don't understand. Like I don't come from the suburbs. Like, I don't come. I come from the hood, like, Southwest Side, little village. Like I grew up in the South Side. I hustled, in the hoods, right? We're nothing but gangsters, and in Chicago, Milwaukee, Columbus, Cleveland, Philly, New York. Like, I wasn't, people one time, I heard, a podcaster say that 50 tried to give us street cred, and that's laughable to me. Like, him give us street cred, not because of a gangster, but because we were hustlers. We were the ones in the
Yeah,
street.
but didn't he come to you to get his necklace back?
Nah, I did him a favor, and I personally made sure, I sent it to him as a gift before I even met him.
Yeah, but that
Um,
just goes to show you who had the streets.
yeah, but people, it's hard for some people to believe that, right? It's hard for people to think that, oh, someone like, with my background couldn't have the streets unlocked, or we couldn't, be the ones that were running it. I will tell you something. Look, you get it, right? I always say, look, I didn't need a gun. But I will
No.
tell you something. All my customers and all their guys, they were my soldiers, right? When I'm feeding, all the city, or I'm feeding people who are, on the streets, they're gonna do everything to make sure nothing happens to me and my brother, right? I had to stop people from, doing stuff, just because, I was their plug, right? And then we get to Mexico, and it's funny to me that they tell me that I was scared, or we couldn't handle life. I was in that life before you've seen it on social media, right? I had the, biggest jugglers in the world that would have done anything, to protect us, or anything, just to make sure that ain't nobody was ever messing
Listen,
with us.
I talked to some big people in prison about y'all, and let me tell you something. I was told that y'all were some of the most protected kids in the United States, the most protected. Every cartel was fighting over you. This is coming straight from cartel people I did time with when we got to talking about it, and they were like, "Listen, at the time they were untouchable. Anybody, anything, at any time would have been taken care of because y'all are such an asset." That goes to tell me when I started following your story and getting into it, I was so intrigued in prison. I'm like, dude, how the fuck did these young kids make it to the top, dude? Because I kept doing time with people that knew you, that dealt with you in the streets, and I'm like, damn, dude, and like,
Yeah. So Jay, I will tell you. Look, I'm confident, and Shy knows this. Shy said there. Look, people have reached out to me. All my guys that were on my case, I'm good with them. We speak to them all the time. A lot of times, I don't like talking about those things, like, because it's almost like I'm trying to justify my background. But I will say, when it comes to the cartels, I'm talking about Chapo, Mayo, Arturo Bertrand Leyva, Barbie. There's some big bosses still there now. El Mencho, those were the people that would protect us. What else do I have to say? One thing they can never say about my brother and I is that we're full of shit, that we're liars. Okay, the
nah,
people that
nobody's ever
know.
said that I know of.
And it's funny because when people drop in the comments, they'll be like, "Oh, you're full of shit. You're cap. You're a rat." Listen, I agree. I'm not gonna. My brother doesn't like it. My brother feels like, look, I'm more than a rat, right? Before I'm a rat, I'm a man. But it just, you have to understand the politics of that world, and I got to see it firsthand. And I will tell you something. I had to do that selfish, decision. I did it for me. Me and my brother did it for ourselves, for our family, because I looked at, there's no winning. When things get a
Well,
little hard.
that's the part that I wanted to come see, Jay. The reason why I've never done a piece on you, and I tell people all the time, I don't target people, right? It comes to me because they're full of shit. Like the Owen Hansen, I went hard on him because I actually had personal, like, everybody answers me in the DMs. Jake
Hmm.
1090, everybody answers me when I come at them
Hmm.
like, "Hey, what's up, bro? Like, listen,
Hmm.
here's my deal. Owen wants to lie. His story's full of shit. I know people he did time with. You know what you need to do is just come out and say, 'Hey, bro, listen, I did X, Y, and Z, and this is what I did.' But I cooperated because it got real when the handcuffs came on. These kids and people out here need to know how real it is. You need to quit giving them false hope and be like, bro, I'm out here, woo, 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 I'm a gangster. I did this and did that." I love when your wife says, like, "Hey, babe, he was making more money than you were." and starts
Mhm.
laughing at you. And I was like, holy shit, I need that piece so bad. I want
So
to do it because here you are, 10 times bigger than anybody, and your wife is clowning you because this kid that's moving like maybe a couple hundred is making more than somebody that moves 70 tons. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, you know what? So I would tell you something like, yeah, there's a lot of holes to his story, right? And it sounds like a movie, and that's what he's kind of going for. He's a narcissist, obviously, right? And I said, look, there's a way to do it. Like I do like that he's doing his talks, and just to let you know, he did answer me. I did invite him to one of my seminars, but I wanted because I felt like, okay, look, Jay, I want to tell you something. Maybe you haven't gone through this, but the fact that I'm Mexican, the fact that maybe I was good at what I did, and everything happened with the feds. A lot of times, like I don't have, I might not sound as articulate as Owen, right? But he plays a part. He's a good speaker. He's articulate. He knows how to sell himself. And I figured, okay, let me bring him onto one of my
Yeah,
seminars,
but
right?
Jay, everywhere I go, everybody talks shit about him. I just did something really big in New York, and Owen's been there before and everything else. Nobody talks good about him. He rubs everybody wrong. He's very cocky. I about got into it with his boy. I did a podcast that big I heard. His boy walks in, and I'm like, oh shit, the police is in here. Because
Mhm.
these dudes are going around talking crazy, and he wanted to act like he's putting his stuff down, like he was going to run up on me. And I was just like, "What? Like, bro, your boy's a rat, dude. Like, fuck you." Like
Y-
I
Yeah,
don't like people that lie. I don't. Nelson Rodriguez is honor among thieves, right?
yeah. A big
And
shout out to Nelson. I see him on the chat. Big shout out to Nelson Rodriguez. I
I
follow
fuck
his
with
channel.
Nelson. Like Nelson's my boy. Nelson cooperated, okay? But Nelson doesn't lie, Jay. He
Mhm.
says, like, when I confront him, he's like, yeah, I did, Jay. I didn't live in the streets. They all told on me, man, and they already knew everything. So fuck it. Why am I gonna do all the time when they already fucking told everything? And I'm like, I understand. If you're straight up with me, I don't care, but I can't stand being around fake people that are lying and putting false shit out there. I didn't want my reason why I didn't tell Jay is because all my connects out of the country never did me wrong, never
Mhm.
did me dirty. I fucked up by getting into the pain clinics because the Zopound, the Haitians were trying to kill me. Okay,
Mhm.
they were trying to get me. I just scored with the Cali Cartel. I went down there, and it's so funny about how your wife is like, "Oh, baby, he had six bodyguards and this and that." Woo woo. Listen, I would go to Columbia, and I would fly in, and two vehicles would pick me up with one guard in each one on bulletproof vehicles. Okay, and the only reason why the guards were in the vehicles is because of kidnappings, nothing else.
Yeah.
Because when the two sons were in the vehicles, they had to be protected all times because of kidnappings. That's the only reason why, nothing else. And the thing is we had guards everywhere we went just because they were protecting us from the gangs in the streets, from kidnappings, because we were gringos and they would like to kidnap us for ransoms. And but I
Yeah, but
could
I
tell
think
you that,
I think he watches too much movies. Like, look, like you can imagine if how guarded we were, and we had real people. Like it's different when you owe the cartel, $250 million at a time. You can imagine what's gonna happen. But again, the city he's talking about is one of the safest cities, one of the richest cities. That's where everyone goes, and we are talking about the stronghold for the CJ&G, right? You don't go there from another cartel and disrespect the way your man. You'd be picked up, in an
yeah.
hour, right? And they don't care how many men you got. They pick people up by the dozen. So it's just that. But here's the side that bothers me, right? You're going on national TV and you're saying these things, right? For what? To sell yourself. And I feel like you're selling bullshit. And not only that, you're talking about stuff that you don't even know. And there's a lot of those people, right? And again, I'm gonna sound like I'm a hater, but when it comes to, okay, experts or people that have some sort of knowledge there, then yeah, it would be me being that person. Like, listen, I don't have that same experience in Colombia, so you'd be the person to tell me that. I know about your story as well, and your background. And again, right? It's just like I think that when I hear these stories, I also feel like I have a duty to be like, look, man, don't believe this shit. Because my brother always says that, he doesn't like
Bro,
that when
Jay,
I
that's why
talk.
I call you, dude. You're the only one that can speak on it. You and Peter, dude. I've never heard nobody ever break anything down like you two do. I swear to you, when you two talk, it's like something I've never seen before. How you sell it and how real you sound. And I try, and I'm, people are like, oh, you're trying to blow him. No, I'm not, dude. The difference is when you listen to Owen Hanson's, like, it's great entertainment. Okay, a lot of these dudes have great entertainment, but at the end of the day, it's like I lived it. I've been there. I've been kidnapped in another country. I've been shot at. I've been chased around. I dealt with the Cali cartel. I got pictures in Colombia with predominant people.
Yeah.
Um, I have evidence to back it up, and I don't talk about them. My plug still talks to me. My girl is right here. She'll tell you. Like, she didn't even know that I pretty much, I thought he was the one who's trying to take me out. So we snuck over there and took him.
Hmm.
And, I don't talk about it on stuff because, they didn't do me dirty. They still, they could have did me dirty. They could have sold me out. They could have did a lot of things. I mean, they didn't. I left the game because I had my daughter, just like you. You say you had your kids and that shit changed your life and you had a family.
I, I I think you know what a lot of it had a lot of there's so much going on, so many things, but it's called growing and maturing. And maybe I just got smarter, and I used to pray every day, like, man, get me out of this. Because here's the issue: it wasn't me and my brother's issues, right? It was other people's issues. Other people were making decisions for us, and it's like I could say all day I was a boss, but you're only a boss till you're to a certain extent when you're around those people, right? And I just didn't want another man to make the decision of what was my life going to be like for me, right? As a man, as a father, I feel like, you know what, I have to just make my own decisions, right? And I took the loophole that hundreds of thousands of drug traffickers and criminals have taken before me, right? I didn't invent this stuff. um and and it's like, I'm not I'm not ashamed of it. I talked to a few of my guys, and since then I said, look, do I feel bad? Yeah, but I'm not gonna tell you sorry, because truthfully I'm not. I'm free. I got a second chance of life, right? and
Yeah, but
and
didn't
I
they all cooperate on you too?
so here's the thing. Most of them did. Most of them took a plea, but some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't are, well, at least one individual was not, you know, he was upset until we spoke, right? Because look, I'm gonna tell you, and this is the first time I'm gonna share this, and Shy knows this because Shy was involved in connecting us. And when he said, "Look, man, I love y'all, like, y'all were my family. Y'all could have just told me." And I'm like, "No, I could have just told you, what I was doing." And he's like, "Look, I just wanted you to see that I was a real one.
You
I had
can't.
told you I would never snitch, And I had sent lawyers to him and telling him to cooperate, and he didn't want to. And he's like, there's some people that were not like that. And he kind of, we talked about the code, right? And I basically told him, I said, if we were living by the code, you and everyone else that talked shit about me would have been dead, because I didn't say that shit when you owe me money, and couldn't pay me, you know.
So my
Uh,
question to you is, Jay, is how serious with El Chapo gone is it really that you still have to be in hiding?
well, look, that's another thing that we always talk about, Jason. It's like when you said, look, what's gonna back me up of where I was, or back our story with me and my brother. We're the only people that testified against Chapo, right, at his
Huh?
trial. You Google, there's conversation I had with Chapo's sons, and so many other people that are on the road. So it's not necessarily, like, I don't. Since then, there's big important people that reached out to me, for help, for advice. Me and Chapo have the same lawyer, just to let you know. And that's not, those people are not the problem, right? The people is here, America, right? These little dudes that, think they're gonna
Want to
make a
make a
name
name
for
for
themselves.
themselves?
Yeah, and make a name for themselves because they're so young and delusional, right, of what it is. And those are the people that I have to worry about, right? But regardless, I'm not gonna take I made it this far, and I've never took it, my life, for granted, and I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to make sure that I stay safe,
No, no, no. I understand
you
that,
know.
but I just figured with all them dropping and because I mean, let's just be honest with you. You think El Chapo's not cooperating?
No,
You lost your mind. When he got his
so
life sentence, that dude was cooperating to
let me tell
protect
you
his family.
something, Jason. You remember the saying goes, right, in federal prison, there's those who told, those who wish were told, right?
Yeah, but I never wish I told. That's the thing about it is that I'm one of the few that
Mhm.
took it to trial. I beat the feds, and then I lost, and I was looking at life, and I still didn't want to ask to cooperate. And when I was in there the whole time, I knew, and I'm going to tell you what it did to my family and what it did to my daughter. it absolutely destroyed me. And the guys that I had connects with, they had families too, and I couldn't put it on them and destroy their families. I was going to let somebody else live with that the rest of their life. I couldn't do it. They never put me in a bad situation. They didn't put hits on my head like the cartels did you by saying you got to pick. I don't know if I'm right, but from what I understood is they pretty much when the war broke out, they told you you had to pick. If not, you were going to get
Well,
taken out.
Jason, you listen. There's exceptions, right? I respect that. The fact that you took a trial, you didn't do it, right? And with us, it's like just to go back to the chopper point, he's tried. The government don't want to, don't have nothing to talk to him about. He wasn't one. He tried. Just so that the biggest drug in the world have tried. Some of the biggest killers that have El Barbie, Chino Anthrax, and so forth. There's so many. Some of the
Well,
biggest drug lords.
Barbie was cooperating. So I'm going to give you a little thing because Matt Cox leaked it. It was off the record conversation. It was not supposed to be in there. And the reason why is because there's certain things about federal prison. You just don't whatever. And so Barbie had two cell phones in prison. Were in
Hmm.
Atlanta USP,
Hmm.
and he was making deals and setting people up from a prison cell, like straight up. Like I'm not bullshitting. Pretty
Hmm.
much working and cooperating. He kept telling everybody, "I'll be home in this many years. I'll be home. I'm going home. I'm going home." Literally, ask your celly, which is me, hey, give me an address and I'll ship as much as you want. 500 keys, what you want, I'll ship it. I was like, bro, dude, like, you don't think I know what he's doing in that room? Like, the COs don't shake him down, they don't touch him. And it ended up coming out later that he was setting people up. Like, he was making steel drug deals from a prison cell, setting people up. How he was doing it, I don't know. But you don't get that kind of freedom where you just sit in there and move drugs around without the feds knowing.
Yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't put it past, people doing like that. Like again, like even saying just from inside knowledge of top of trying to cooperate, just but the government doesn't care. But there's been so many big cartel figures that have cooperated. But again, you know what? Even I wouldn't compare myself to them doing it, right? Because me and my brother were probably some of the first most known ones in the Mexican drug cartel, at those levels to do it. And we had pressure. Here's the thing that we haven't spoke about is that they started giving us a list on both sides of people they wanted to get rid of, and some of them were really good friends of mine. And me and my brother were like, man, if I have to kill my guys just to be in good standing, when I never been involved, and they were, they were really good friends. They were close to my family. I felt like, look, that was a decision I couldn't do. So I said, look, I would rather snitch on them, let them decide if they're gonna, hopefully they get away and let them make their own decision if they want to spend the rest of their life in prison or they want to do the same thing. But I just couldn't. I couldn't. Me and my brother didn't want to be the ones
No,
that
I
did it.
agree with that. And I
You
understand that. And
know.
that's why listen, Jay, I wanted to come on to explain people there's not levels of cooperation. But 6ix9ine, I call him the gatekeeper of the rappers because they all bashed him, right? But at the end of the day, you can't commit crimes with somebody and then when they go to print, when everybody gets locked up, put a hit on him before he cooperates, go fuck his old lady, and then turn around and shoot his mom's house up and expect him to what? Be loyal? Like, come on, bro.
Yeah,
Like, you can't do that. And then the dude is out here running the streets, dogging them out, blasting everybody, and nobody's doing nothing to him. So it just goes to show people where the power is ended at in like retaliation. Like, nobody's even tried to take him out.
but also, Jason, it's like it's also on them. 6ix9ine wasn't a thug to begin with. He was putting on persona of who he was, and they made him that way. So
Yeah.
they have to take responsibility for that as well. Look, I'm not gonna compare myself to a damn street gang, to some little, what I'm saying, gangsters out there. Like, and big shouts out to like 6ix9ine that he was able to survive that. But once just imagine they're trying to put him in the trunk, right? They rob him. They're trying to put him in the trunk, just basically extorting him and doing a lot. Like he was backed up against the wall and he did what he had to do. But he has taken responsibility for it, right? And at the end of the day, when you try to sell the criminal world, right, to your regular public, when you have more people who are go to work every day, they'll drop me a line and say rat or call 6ix9ine a rat. like they're not even about their life. They don't understand it, and they're sure not gonna understand the Mexican drug cartel world, right? They're far removed by that. This ain't Narcos. This ain't Netflix. This is real life. Um, so for him, it's like, yeah, what do you expect from anyone, right? What do you expect anyone to do? But to survive, right? It's called survival. And they put him in that situation, right? They put him in a lose lose. So even when you ask me, how did we do it, to survive? How did we do it to get so big? Look, I stood away from violence. I didn't mind when people call me out my name. I didn't, I wasn't gonna kill someone for stepping on my shoes or even running off with $500,000, right?
Listen, bro, the guys that dealt with you, the guys I did, it blew my mind how well they spoke about you. And they told me the demeanor about you because you're the one in the streets dealing with everybody, right? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, that was me.
So
I was on the streets all the
you're
time.
the one that they were talking about. I don't ever remember them talking about Peter, your brother, but they would talk about you. And when they would talk about you, they talked about you like some stand up dude. And like I said, I've never heard your story, never knew anything about you. I had to read up on you. And there still wasn't a lot back then about you at all, about you or your brother. And I'm like, how the fuck did these boys get so big so fast? Well, I didn't realize that you've been in it your whole life and your older brother and
Yeah.
everything else. But, you know, explain to people, this is like, because these clips are going to get put out there and stuff. I tell people all the time, it was the lifestyle that was my addiction. I didn't do drugs. First, it was the money, then it turned into the lifestyle. That shit will grab anybody. And once it got so big, and next thing you know, I'm getting drug in a car by the Haitians, and then they're chasing me around a car trying to kill me. You know what I'm saying? Like, the shit got real, real quick. Was it worth it? I just had a daughter. I'm just now starting to get where I can move hundreds of kilos. I could get way more if I wanted to, but I was making sure that I had the port on lock, that I could trust the people. So, I started moving like 25, 50 in the shipment just to try it out because I didn't want to send a lot. So then we did 100, then we did another 100, and then we were going to start bumping up to like 500 plus kilos at a time.
Mhm.
And, you know, but here we go again. I didn't have protection like you did with the cartels. The Colombians are not going to protect you. They don't have a pool like the Mexicans do. We don't have I have the port unlocked, but I don't have the islands unlocked. I'm just this
Mhm.
white boy. You know what I'm saying? And everybody knows black dudes are way more vicious. They're not loyal in the game like that in other countries. It's like, who's this white boy over here trying to take us out? And the shit got real, real quick for me, and I got out of it, and I became one of the biggest pill mill guys in the United States, and they wanted to put me away for life for it. And you know, um,
You dealt with the twins too, right? In Florida.
yes, George, yeah, Chris and Jeff George, ones that
Yeah.
started my whole case. I put a gun to
Yeah.
Chris's head, or Derek Nolan actually goes
Yeah.
on Matt Cox. I put a gun to his head,
Yeah.
and they called the cops on me.
Yeah. I see that documentary. I'm good friends with the producers, but the producer knows you.
Yeah,
American Pain,
I
right?
had to sue his ass almost. I had to get an attorney to get all my stuff back. So I was gonna be in that, but once I found out he was like making all the guys that told on me like these, like he American Pain got a lot of bad reviews because he like idolized them and like put them on a pedestal instead of just telling the story. He kind of like idolized them. Everybody, I read the reviews and stuff, and Darren Foster, um, he um, he kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He refused to give me all my stuff back or whatever. Like he was trying to hold on to all my discovery and stuff. So all the pictures and videos in there almost all come from me because I was the only one that went to trial.
Okay. Yeah. I have nothing but good things to say about Darian, and I saw the documentary. I don't know the twins. It was just ironic, that's how I actually years ago. That's how I started following you and stuff. But look, for me, and my brother, being in the States, growing up in Chicago, like all our customers, we only dealt with African Americans. Those are like all my guys were family to me. And they didn't have nothing bad to say because we've never changed. It's been, the only thing we don't do now is you took away, we the business is not there, and it goes the same. Like I tell Shy all the time that there's not one cartel member, there's not a real dude that could say anything else other than damn they cooperated, right? Um, and we were businessmen, we were about the money, right? But when gangster shit gets in the cross, and it gets in the way of us making money, then we had to we had to make that decision, right? Um, of what we were gonna do. And I will tell you something. Look, in order for me to change my life, I had to, we had to risk our life undercover in Mexico, cooperating, against the most deadliest drug cartels of the world. Okay,
Yeah, but
I
how were
had
you
to.
able to do that to get away? Like, tell me, like, how they
That
didn't pat you down and do scannings and stuff when you met with El Chapo, or he was so comfortable with you?
that's gonna be a long story, but that's the difference. I wasn't, we were them, Jason.
I
Does that
know.
make
That's
sense?
what I said. You were a part of them.
So yeah, so they're not looking at me, and there's a bunch of individuals that are free that know that I took them to go see some of these people, and they didn't question me. There's no question. I never had to worry about that. We were the last people that they ever probably considered that would do something like that. Everything was happening at the right time, right? um I had gone through where we were arrested, kidnapped by the Mexican government, and Mentor had to come break us out in the most violent way, right? And all of these things were happening that felt like, what the hell am I doing? At the end of the day, the money was nice, and I will tell you something. uh I, People ask us all the time how much money we made, and just to correct you, like, even the conspiracy was, from 2005 to the end of 2008, December 1st, right? In total for both organizations, we accepted responsibility for 100 tons of cocaine, but that was just in the course of the conspiracy. Okay, we started trafficking in '98.
God damn. How much
All
money do you
right.
think you made over the whole time?
I would, a lot. And I would tell you something. It's a different world, right? And probably your father and people that were raw, in the Pablo Escobar, they could understand that we're at a different, our business was at a different level than most, people that you hear. And me and my brother used to joke and say, some of these guys, they didn't make the money that we lost, including Big Beach. How about that? Just think about what I say about that.
Dude,
You
listen,
know,
Jay. The reason why I understand this is because I grew up around a lot of guys that made hundreds of millions. This is in the '80s. So what's 100 million in the '80s to work today? $1 billion.
$1 billion easy,
You
easy.
see what I'm saying? Like, so it's actually crazy because the two twins that are the two brothers down here, the race boats from the '80s, the
Yeah, yeah.
Falcons.
Falcons,
So
Falcons.
one
Yeah,
of the Falcon brothers follows me and talks, and I'm supposed to meet up with them and stuff. And they smuggled over $1 billion back in the day. So imagine what that is today.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like them boys did on a whole nother level. But here's my question to you: from what I know back in the day, what do you do with all that cash?
Well, I learned. Everyone taught us, not to make the mistake of try to put it anywhere in any bank or any, and we kept it. A lot of the money we just kept in the business, and we spent money. Um, that's just for another story, right? But it's just like what we didn't do was invest it in legit, because we knew the feds were going to come and going to take everything from us.
Yeah.
And then we basically, we did do what every Mexican drug cartel member does, or Colombian cartel member would do, right?
Yeah,
You
but you
put
can't
that.
keep it in cash. I had so much cash at times I was buying gold and burying fucking gold because the amount he does it.
It's just,
What was Escobar saying? He was losing $1 million a week or some shit to rats eating it.
yeah, you have to have experience with that. So that's for another story, Jason. Right? That's for another story. But just how, when people always ask for the number or whatever. Look, I'm gonna tell you like this. We were importing sometimes. In my cases, that we're bringing up dope in submergibles. Right? I could make $10,000 a key from LA to DC. Okay, just think about that. It's a lot of money, right?
What do you mean
Uh,
you bring? Were you bringing it around to LA a submersible like a sub
from
thing
No,
into
what I'm saying,
America?
we would bring up drug. We would bring in from Colombia and Panama into Mexico, and then LA over, right? But just as an example, from even at LA price, from LA to DC, we can make 10 grand a key.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
What were
on
you? What
average.
would you be your cost once you got it across? Before you got it, say you got it to Mexico. What was your cost per key once you got it to Mexico?
It landed in Mexico at that time, right? Because I know the numbers are really low right now, but landed in Mexico City, right? We're like at 4,800, 5,000, 5,500, depending.
I was getting out of Mexico, out of Colombia for 3,000 on a boat.
Yeah, and landed where?
Bahamas. I had the port on lock in
Okay,
Bahamas.
and then Bahamas to Miami. What was your overall cost?
I would have around 7 to 8 thousand, no, 8 to 9 thousand per brick. Time I got it to the United States by paying everybody off, I'd have around 8 9 grand per brick, and that was
So that's right. I landed for us, and landed from Source to LA. We'd be around, probably like 80 something, 109,000.
I was between 8 9 thousand is where I was
Yeah,
at, and
yeah.
I wasn't doing on the level as you, but luckily the Cali cartel seen that I had the port on lock, that I had a
Hmm.
plug, and they were so excited to have a route to the Bahamas.
Yeah,
So they were like coaching me, like, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna set off slow. I don't know. People ask me all the time, like, how'd they get it in? I don't know. They would never tell me because the one thing they told me was we can get it in any boat and any port out of the ports, but it's up to you to get it off the boat. We can
yeah,
get
yeah.
it
That's the
anywhere we
hardest
want.
thing.
You'll never know, but this is the deal. You'll get a container. You'll get the information we want to give you. You give it to your people, and we communicated mostly through emails, through a draft.
Yeah, we used to use that all the time. We used to just use drafts,
Yeah.
depending, right? Depending on the circumstance, but drafts were always a great way to communicate. But you know what? Just here's the advantage that me and my brother had. We didn't have no middleman. Some of our guys, we could give them 300 400 kilos. You get me? Our guys, were 200 kilos at a time, and so they were able to make money with us. So there's a lot of our guys, made a lot of money. Uh, and that's what we were about, us making money together, and just at a different level. Okay, I will tell you something. I always laugh and joke. I said sometimes, a lot of these drug traffickers or so-called drug traffickers out there, they were not as big as my girl. Just to think about that. So so
So,
this, you know,
God damn, you just made a bunch of people look like a little bitch.
but again, but here's the thing. We're
But
talking about the
Jay,
past. We're talking about the past,
I
right?
get it. But think about this, Jay. Hold on. Think about this. Look at the numbers that you were pushing. There's just as much drug in the streets, if not more, today because the numbers are lower. That means it's flooded. That means somebody's doing what you're doing on the same scale or bigger, or there's 10 of you making, and you knew what kind of profits you were making. So it's like there's 10 of you out there.
You know what? No, right now I would tell you something. It's there's probably what maybe 30 times the amount of dope out there compared to when we were around. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there. It's just broken down. Maybe it's not as organized or by one person, but for the Midwest, and some of the eastern cities, we did have it unlocked. And I will tell you something. All that money, everything we've been through, people would talk about, oh, somebody got us, somebody robbed us, or somebody, it happens. I would tell you, me and Shai talked about it the other day. Like just Chapo gets robbed. For all those people who think that, but when you're in that world and you're selling
Who
those
would
amount of
rob him?
drugs, other cartels.
Other cartels would like jack their shipments.
Yeah, you know what? If you don't get a chance, you want to know like a lot of insights about the cartel. Uh, there's a book called The Trader. Shai broke it down. He could put it on the link. It's Mayo Zambada's son, who I consider to be the third in command. Very smart guy. He was the cartel. He basically breaks down, his story, his father's story, and all the shit they used to go through, right? And Shai translated. He read it as a series on his own channel, so you could check it out.
So here's another question I want to ask you. I want you people to understand because they get this messed up a lot. You had made a statement saying that there was times El Chapo was broke.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. When you take money out the business and broke and liquid broke, like broke drug trafficking,
Yeah, no,
Chapo,
that's what I want you to explain. Because when you get a big load of fucking 200,000 kilos or whatever the hell them shipments are getting hit, that hits you.
yeah. So remember, it in order for you to be Chapo, it takes a lot of money, right? Because you got to pay government. You're paying, personnel. Your overhead, is a lot, and they spend a lot. So investing in loads, it's supply chain, right? Investing in loads. If you're bringing in 20 30 tons, you better have the money for 60, 90 tons. The same way it went for us. In order for us to be able to sell, 25, 3,000 keys, we had to, have, 6, 9,000 keys in motion, right? All the time. And for them, they reinvest their money, what you count the losses and stuff. Um, he had to be, selling 30, 40,000 keys. You get me? At a time just to be able to stay afloat and make a profit. And when
So,
you get when you there's hits and stuff, you have to pay for them.
so they allowed you to move to work around them and move keys from Columbia up.
Oh, together collectively, remember, we know the big names, but there's a lot of people that work with them. But
Listen, I already trust me. I did time, and
yeah,
I hung out
yeah.
down there. I
Yeah,
listen.
so it was worth it for just say that, they put a bunch of different loads together, just say submergibles, whatever, right? Well, let's just stick to submergibles. They could put 6, 8 of them, 10 of them, and put together. They might fit anywhere from 6 to just say 10, 11 tons, but they're not investing in all of them. They might put 2 tons of their own on each submergible and look for a bunch of people like me and invite us up. Hey, invest, and we have to produce the dope on our own, and then they'll take 20% at
Gotcha.
cost. Uh, so it's good. Just imagine, you're bringing a sub, you're bringing 10 tons. They invest in two tons, and then they allow a bunch of other people to bring 8 tons. They keep 20% of that and charge $1,000 for the ride. You know,
Okay.
um, so it was beneficial for anyone, right?
No, that's
Because
actually kind of smart. I've never heard nobody say that because when I did all, so it was funny was when I was ranking runs back and from Bahamas, everybody kept telling me, "Oh, you can't do that. Them days are over with." And when I got my plug over there, it was so funny that so many people like his people be like, "Hey, can we throw some shit on your boat? Hey, can we pay you? Can we do this? Can we do that?" And I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, no, I don't want nothing to do with this." But now I understand that they were doing it to a lot of people, and I think it's just like what you're saying. They're splitting their loads up.
yeah, you split it up, so it could be anything. So just they're not gonna put all their money in, right? And for us, look, we're there's a lot of there was dozens of people like us, Mexican people that were distributing. But for us, since they love the fact that we could pay for those loads once it hit Chicago, once it hit a city in the U.S. and and you need money, so they wanted us, at the same time they want us to make money, but it's a good business for them. For any load, it doesn't matter if it's a container or any route. If they allow other people to invest and they're taking a percentage, it just gives them the ability to make more money, and for their people to for us to make more money. In turn, it goes back to them some way somehow.